to introduce here in the studio Senator Etta Enang, Special Advisor to the President on Niger Data Affairs. Has also been in politics since 1999, and they would like to really welcome him formally to this edition of the program. So you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria.
Also here in the studio is Malam Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, and happy holiday.
Happy Democracy Day. And also here in the studio is Cynthia Mbamalu, Programs Director, Yaga Africa. Yaga Africa stands for Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. Cynthia, it's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Gentlemen and lady, we're glad to have you this morning. The setting is right for this conversation. Now, the year 1999 marked a watershed in the history of modern Nigeria. Nigerians have witnessed and also experienced 22 years of uninterrupted democratic governance. And our concern this morning is to do a review of how it has been since 1999. First, let's get your views on how the journey has been so far. I understand that, of course, it's a tortuous journey because they have recorded ups and downs, in the course of administering democratic governance in the nation. Let's begin with Malam Garba Shehu. What is your view of the journey so far of democracy in Nigeria?
Well, I think so far so good. When you consider that military rule, which had taken much part of our period of independence over this period of time, had the effect of truncating, the growth of parliaments and also the growth and independence of judiciary. The executive had always subsisted even under military. And so therefore, in the last 22 years, then you are seeing a process by which parliaments, state, national, trying to rebuild themselves and to gain national acceptance. The judiciary also struggling to really assume their full responsibility as the second, as the third tier of the government. And to some extent also the media, which is the fourth pillar, as they say, of democracy. The military had haunted and had shackled the media. So everyone is trying to, reconstruct themselves and be up and doing. And I think that, so we are not having it as perfectly as the more advanced countries have, but we are doing so well. The economy particularly is something to celebrate over this period of time. When you consider that, under democracies, there is a sense that the more freedom citizens have, the more their economies are likely to grow and get better. And today, as we speak, we take the pride of being the continent's biggest economy. And this will continue for a long time because there isn't any chance that anybody would be challenging us in that regard. Yes, we have had successive elections over this period of time, which is the most important feature of any democracy. Periodic elections, power had changed from one leader to the next within political parties, and we have also witnessed it from a ruling party to an opposition party. So on the overall, I think that democracy has done well in the last 22 years, and we have much to celebrate over this.
Okay, thank you, Garba Shehu. Senator Etta Enang, you've been in the thick of it all, from prior to 1999 to now. I would like you to tell us your experience in the corridor of power and how democracy has fared in the 22 years. Is it up to our expectations as Nigerians?
I think it is up to our expectations as Nigerians, but it could have been better. But given the fact that we're still developing, but again, we've overcome the stage that we can be said that we normally call nascent democracy. Nigerian democracy is no more nascent at 22. Let me use the opportunity to congratulate His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari for being the person that is celebrating the 22nd year and been on the turf for 6 years now, marked by, which we are marking now. And the National Assembly, because the legislature has always been the victim of any truncation of democracy. But the National Assembly has been able to exist for 22 clear years and then mark that by the 9th of June. The difference between the military government or non-democratic administration and this democratic administration is that you can stand up and ask questions. You can call your leader by his name. You can ask questions about your money. You can ask questions about the budget. You can ask questions about the implementation of the budget. You can ask questions about the activities and conduct of the public officers. You can ask questions to your governors, to your ministers. You can call them. They come before the parliament and stand before the camera and say, how did we spend this money? Where is the money? What is the result? You can, in a democracy, follow the money. Let us also appreciate that under this democracy, there has been challenge of security. And the challenge of security, our security forces, the armed forces, has been of great, has been up to it. But they have challenges which we are addressing. And again, it is important to congratulate Abdul Salami Abubakar, who pivoted the transfer of power to the civilians in 1999. And again, congratulate those who dared today. Because when you consider the history of interventions, the military interventions, not many people believed that after the annulment of the elections under UNCP, GDM, and all that, when Abacha passed on, that the next transition would be, the next democratic preparation would be successful. But men dead, Obasanjo dead, governors dead, President Obasanjo dead for the presidency, and others dead. So it is all this daring that has taken us to a long journey, very successful. And very successful in terms of the fact that as a democratic country, other countries are able to relate and deal and do business with us. We can approach the international financial institutions and then have facilities to develop our country. The investors can come in knowing that there is a democratic institution in place. And of course, we've been working on developing ourselves through the growing our economy internally and domestically.
All right, we'll return to you in the course of the program. But first of all, let us introduce another guest who has just joined us from our Ibadan Network Center, and that's the Professor Emmanuel Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. Prof, it's good to have you this morning with us. You're welcome.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here, and I wish Nigerians a happy holiday on this Democracy Day.
All right, I will be with you in a moment. Now let's return to our studio here in Abuja, where we have Cynthia. Now, Cynthia, democracy is actually adjudged as the best form of government globally. And in 1999, Nigeria joined other civilized countries by enthroning democratic political system in the nation. And now let's get your own view of the nation's democratic development trajectory since 1999.
Thank you so much. And I think first is in the spirit of Thanksgiving to wish Nigerians happy democracy celebration, because we're still in the mood of celebration. And I would say democracy has been adjudged as one of the best forms of government, and it's because it is centered on the people. So you can't talk about democracy without the people. So the 1999 celebration of transition from military rule to civilian rule was very significant because for a long period of time, the people wanted to be part of the government. They wanted to speak and be heard. They wanted to experience what you call the dividends of democracy. And it came with a lot of hope, you know. And we've seen that journey from 1999 till 2021. And I think it's been quite a tough journey. And honestly, democracy is a work in progress. It's something you keep working on. It's not self-realized. It's something you work on and you build. But to get to the point where you'd say, what are our expectations? Has democracy met citizens' expectations? No. I don't think this was the democracy that was intended when we were hoping to transit to democracy. And in fact, in the spirit of the June 12th celebration, there was a reason June 12th became significant in our history. And because for the first time, you had an election where people spoke, and then they felt that their will was stolen when the elections was annulled. So fast forward to where we are today, 22 years after, the conversation is, do people feel free in the system that they live in? What is the quality of or the standard of living? Because if you want to assess our democracy and to categorically say if it has met expectation of the people, you want to look at specific indicators like one, economic equality. Can we say we have achieved economic equality? No, because we've seen a decline in the standard of living with the increase in level of poverty, with the increase in the rates of unemployment. We've seen a major threat to life with the increase in insecurity in the country. We've also seen a threat to free speech with specific regulations too, and even the attack to civic space. So are there opportunities and is there hope? Yes, because I would always push for more democracy. However, while we celebrate democracy this year, I think there's a lot that needs to be done. And we need to be honest with ourselves, because until we begin to tell ourselves the truth, we wouldn't start fixing the problem. As an average Nigerian, as an average Nigerian youth, there's a lot of disaffection amongst Nigerians across the geopolitical zones, across the spaces, because we are yet to get to where we want to get to. But we need an honest conversation where the government and the people converse and speak and interact to come up with solutions that would fix the problem. But if one side keeps saying everything is perfect, then we wouldn't begin to solve it, because if you don't agree that you're sick, you wouldn't go to the medical institution to receive help. So I think for me, this period is significant because this is a time we should be honest and say there is a problem. Now, how can we solve the problem? Because if the people do not feel connected to democracy, then it is not democracy indeed.
Okay, Cynthia, thank you so much for an elaborate opening statement there. Let's now join Professor Emmanuel Erde, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. I'm sure you've been listening to the opening statement of our guest here in the studio. It has not been a smooth ride in the 22 years of democracy in Nigeria. Let's have an overview of what you feel and what is lacking in our democratic process.
Thank you very much. I think the first thing we need to acknowledge is the fact that for the first time we have had over 2 decades of continuous democratic practice. That itself is some kind of achievement if you recognize the fact that most experiments that we have had in the past ended up with military rule. We have had also change of the party in government, and we have also had change of officers both at the leadership at the state level and the leadership at the national level. These are achievements that we can say count for us under this current Fourth Republic. Beyond that, we also have had the chance to learn and to see what is working and what is not working for us as a country. We have had all kinds of challenges thrown into the basket, and the degree to which we have responded to them matters for the way citizens feel the impact of democratic practice. And one of the, I think the three very important elements of assessment of performance in government will have to do with, one, unemployment, would have, second, inequality, and then, of course, third, poverty. On these indicators, performance has been uneven. In the first decade of democratic rule, I think some of these indicators were looking up, and Nigerian economy was growing between 6 to 7% at some point. But we can't say that now because of a number of reasons, some of which are self-inflicted, while others are the result of the general global economic situation, i.e. in terms of our dependence on oil and the general situation with commodity prices in the international market. Secondly, we also had the COVID-19 pandemic, which has become a major challenge for countries around the world. These are some of the factors that we need to look at in terms of trying to assess the performance of democracy in Nigeria. But there are also internal challenges which we need to look at very critically, especially in terms of leadership of the various institutions of government in the country, from the local government level to the state government level, not just in terms of the executive, but also in terms of the legislature. I'm happy that we have representatives of the legislature here, and it's important for them to also do some kind of self-reflection in terms of the goals, for instance, of the institution of the National Assembly, which on aggregate represent Nigerian people sitting down, deliberating, and finding solutions to the problems of the country. How well have they done, and what are the issues that Nigerians are raising concerning their performance? They need to look at those issues very closely in terms of what Nigerians get back from democratic rule and what those who are in positions of government get from being in those positions of government. I think on the people's side, many think that they have received less in terms of dividend of democracy, and those in positions of government seems to want to take everything away. These are very fundamental issues that we need to look at as we reflect on over 2 decades of democratic practice in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you indeed. Gentlemen and lady, the fulcrum of governance and democratic governance in Nigeria within the period under review is no doubt the foundation laid between 1999 and 2007, which introduced a plethora of policies and reforms. Namely, we had the EFCC, ICPC, banking reforms, poverty alleviation, privatization, policy emphasis on infrastructure development. Most of these reforms and policies have been also sustained by subsequent administrations. And I'd like to bring in Itai Enang here, who has been in practice for all this number of years. Would you say that all these reforms and policies have impacted positively on Nigerians as individuals?
Well, these policies were introduced under the President Obasanjo's first term and consolidated in the second term. Most of the ones were the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, but first, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission were established. And later followed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And then there were the money laundering prohibition measures. And then later we had cries from the Niger Delta producing oil and so on, and then looking for what are called resource control then. That was resolved by ensuring that the 13% derivation was effected. And of course, we had the amendment which allowed for some part of oil from the offshore 200-meter water depth isobath to be credited as oil from that area. These were some of the achievements of that administration. And then we had the banking reforms. I think it was definitely under the Obasanjo administration that we had the major reform of the central bank. Then we had the finance. I mean, the law that relates to the functioning of the financial institutions. Then, under all that, democracy was challenged because there was an attempt to amend the constitution to allow for a third term, which was stoutly resisted. And this is one of the greatest achievements of the legislature at the federal level, and of course the pressure that was brought on it from the entire country. We were able in 2006 to resist the amendment of the constitution, which would have allowed 2005-2006, which would have allowed a president to contest for a third term, which again would have really shaken the democracy. I want to say that under that, present practitioners and activists in this administration were a great part of putting pressure to make sure that that amendment to the Constitution did not stand. Again, we had pressures from the South again, and then Umpadek Decree was abolished, and they introduced the Niger Delta Development Commission in 2000, which brought a lot of peace, or some peace, to the Niger Delta and allowed the economy to flow. Generally, there was other amendments to other laws and then introduction of other laws. But one of the most important things was that the legislature was able at the federal level, under the leadership of Dr. Okadigbo, of the Senate President, and Gali Umar Abba as Speaker of the House of Representatives, to ensure and obtain autonomy for the federal legislature. When we introduced a new budgeting, a kind of an improved budgeting system that allowed for statutory transfers of funds directly to the judiciary and directly to the legislature, so that the legislature was recognized as a specific arm of government, not just in theory, but it had its own fund to manage, get into trouble, and manage itself out of it. It was a lot independent. Now, we also introduced autonomy for the judiciary by ensuring that funds meant for the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, National Industrial Court, as it now is, the Federal High Court, and other federal judicial bodies were sent directly to the National Judicial Council, which was introduced by the Constitution, and they were a lot independent. Now, again, under that administration, successfully, there was in 2003, the conduct of the first election under a democracy presided over by a president and of a party, and some other parties won at the state level. Now, in the 2007, they also did, and there was successful transition of power from the President Obasanjo's administration to the Yar'Adua administration. These were some of the measures which I think that laid foundation for successive administrations to ensure that the democracy which was introduced, has been practiced, is sustained, because that transition from the President Obasanjo's second term to the Yar'Adua's administration, and of course how even the transition from the President Yar'Adua, due to the circumstances, were handled when there was no constitutional provision, and it wasn't envisaged. It was handled, and then we have doctrine of necessity. So all that were things that show that democracy has come to stay, it can be practiced, and where you have a problem, the Democrats and the practitioners can ingeniously, constitutionally, come up with measures that can allow for democracy to thrive. In all this, we had challenges internally, but we were able to manage it. But in all, it was the support of Nigerians and the pressure from the press, the pressure from the media, because they never allowed any shaking to get to a position of shaking, of turning the table.
Okay, thank you so much. Malam Garba Shehu, we need to take a step back to, we are here today because of June 12th, and an election that was annulled. In our intro, the reporter said there was no tribe, ethnicity, or religion didn't come into play then. Where are we getting it wrong now in Nigeria?
Well, certainly the best thing that could happen to a country as our own through the democratic process happened in that election in which Abiola was chosen by Nigerians, as you said, irrespective of all of these divisions, ethnicity, religion, and so on. That election has generally been adjudged as the gold standard for this country and globally. And it is essentially for this reason that President Buhari looked back and said, well, recognized and accepted the results, apologized on behalf of the nation for its annulment, and gave the highest national honor to MKO Abiola. So we have come a long way from then, and the question is, where are we today, and where are things not what they ought to be? I want to say that this country has taken quite a number of measures recently, including the issues of the Twitter, which the Minister of Information has been handling. I think that it is a major setback for this country that tribalism was back all over again. This is something that most Nigerians believed that we had put behind us, especially with the June 12 religion. You know, it was a Muslim ticket, but Nigerians said, well, we want capacity, we want real change in our lives, and this team, irrespective of their identity being the same in terms of religion, they will deliver. I think that in the last few days, weeks, we are seeing, a firmer determination by the administration under President Muhammadu Buhari to tackle some of these, artificial divisions that are standing in the way of national cohesion and the progress of the country. As I cited the Twitter as just one of them, but from the pronouncements of the president, the interview he did with Arise TV and your own NTA here, and all of the things he said, the speeches he did in Lagos, and the broadcast that he gave, I think are suggestive of the fact that the president is determined that the growing rot in the country must not continue. And something.
If I may come in, if you put your hand on the pulse of Nigerians, the speech, the interview the president granted, do you think it sort of allayed the fears of Nigerians that the president is in control and is taking charge of the situation in this country? Yeah,
well, he has always been. And there is the misperception, or is it a false propaganda? By his own personal style, President Buhari is not too forward. But being a bit, not being frontal in many respects is certainly not a sign that of lack of effectiveness or one is not in charge. And so what do you have? People had yearned for him to speak to Nigerians, and they have advocated for this, including the National Parliament, pass resolutions. And then there he was, and really speaking as President Buhari, nothing artificial about him. And people will dissent, obviously, and as you have seen, quite a number of... So as say, what is the pulse of Nigerians with regard to that? I think the larger sections of Nigerians are satisfied, are happy. I haven't seen the president animated, real life, capable and, exuding that confidence and capability to govern well. But that obviously will have disappointed some people who, in their view, nothing good will come out of an administration in which they are not a part of.
Yes, there's no doubt the fact that the current administration has, of course, taken some giant strides in trying to right the wrongs of this nation. But let us not forget that we are talking about 22 years of administration in Nigeria. So let me take us back to the issue of election in this country, because it's a key factor in the democratic governance. Now, Cynthia, elections in a multicultural society such as ours often are characterized by hate campaigns, hate speeches, mudslinging, electoral violence, rigging, and falsification of results. How have you fared in trying to attenuate these ugly events in our elections? We've had about 5 or 6 of them since 1999.
That's an important question, because one of the indicators to assess the presence of democracy is the conduct of free, fair, peaceful elections in a system. And you mentioned Nigeria, and I think one of the biggest threats to Nigeria's democracy actually is our political leaders. Because let's talk about who are those who have the power to either deploy violence, manipulate the system, manipulate our divisive lines, or let's say our differences, to favor a particular cause. And honestly, it's their political elite. And I think we need to be clear on how this works and how this plays out in the electoral process. Now, we have an electoral process that is first past the post, the electoral system rather, first past the post, meaning the winner takes all, which I think, honestly, we need to go back and review. And one of the proposals by the Waste Committee was to consider an adoption of a mixed system, a mix of both first past the post and proportional representation. Maybe then it will reduce the tendency for politicians to want to win at all costs. So that is one. So fundamentally, the design of our electoral system has made elections quite competitive, especially in a diverse and multicultural and multi-religious system like Nigeria. And because politics is a game of numbers, one of the strategies that the political elites have deployed is during the election. So let us think about, when do you have an increase in hate speech and an increase in violence around the elections, towards elections? In fact, most of what you see happening now, these are all targeted towards the next elections, because what you see is the differences they begin to be manipulated, and the people are put against each other. Now, why is there a challenge with the system? Because beyond the design itself is the question on, do the people trust and believe in the system? Because we still have a large population who do not have confidence in our electoral process. We've seen a decline in turnout. Last presidential elections, 35% turnout. That is an F if you're writing an exam. That is a fail. But you see, people do not even feel interested to be part of the system. So now where are we losing it? Because it's not like we don't have the laws. I don't think our challenge is even the absence of laws. We have effective laws. It's in the implementation and in the enforcement, but also that those who have power, those who are in power, that they respect and enforce these laws. Because if the laws exist and it's not regulating conduct, it means that people do not have trust in the system. So we have a challenge with our elections. It can be better. We've seen an improvement. Honestly, I work on elections, and I've seen an improvement in the elections. But we're not where we need to get to. And I want to bring in the conversation around the electoral reform, because if we want people to come out, they need to trust the system. If we review the laws to ensure that we have a legal framework that inspires trust and confidence in the system, then the people would feel confident to come out and vote. But now people don't see that level, that don't feel connected to the system to even come out to vote. The other point is the question on promoting integrity in the system. And because if citizens do not feel that government is meeting its needs. Actually, we did a voter turnout assessment report after post-2019 elections. And one of the factors that affected turnout, people felt that government was not meeting the needs of the people. So they did not see the need to vote. They'll tell you, why come out to vote? After voting, we don't see them. After voting, we don't feel the dividends of democracy. So why vote? So you could see that there was a disconnect between the citizens and the government. So in a democracy, if we want elections elections to truly work, then we need to start seeing performance on the part of the government, because then the people would feel that, yes, they are connected to the government. But electoral reform is key. The system cannot be perfect. We keep building and building upon the system. But if we're not taking intentional steps to do that, people will not trust in it. And I wanted to add an important point, because there was a conversation that I don't want this to be sidetracked. The conversation around division, around the hate speech, or even the disunity between the whole thing about ethnicity and religion and what have you, honestly, that is a function of economic and political inequality, where people feel that there is a sense of inequality, where there's an increase in poverty. We begin to point fingers at each other. We begin to fight each other. So that sense of inequality, the growing level of political and economic inequality, that is our problem. That is what is raising all of these issues. The threat to security, that is our problem. Twitter is not our problem, let's be honest. The thing is, if people start feeling that government is not responding, if hunger rate is increasing, if people are losing a sense of hope, then they begin to fight each other. It's easy for people to pick arms against the state when you don't think the state is meeting your needs. So if we begin to solve inequality, if we begin to meet the needs of the people, you will start seeing more commitment to the state, more commitment to the system, more commitment to the vision Nigeria. That is where I want us to go to today, that this conversation is, how do we solve the challenges that we have? How do we unite the people? Because right now, the poverty, the insecurity is making us question everything, and we're pointing fingers at each other rather than coming together to work as a united people.
All right, Cynthia, I was going to pause you there, because I would like Professor Ayede to also speak to the issue of elections in Nigeria, because, of course, elections determine how democratic governance, the shape and form of any democratic governance, is very key to any democratic principle. Sir, the 2015 general elections were not only the fifth, but the quadrennial since 1999. I'd like you to do a comparative analysis of the election of 2015 and that of 2019. Did we learn any lesson from what played out in 2015 and to what happened in 2019 during elections?
The best way to begin is to say that there has been an incremental effort to reform the electoral process in Nigeria. And that has resulted into some kind of improvement over the years. But you note a very important difference between 2015 and 2019. That of 2015 was largely informed by some of the changes that were made in the Constitution to ease the electoral process. By 2019, the measures that were also taken to improve the legal framework for the election did not end up being implemented. I remember the bill for the amendment were presented 4 times, and then the last excuse that was given by the president was that the amendment was too close to the elections. And that is a major problem that we need to talk about, and to put it back to members of the National Assembly to ensure that those changes are presented to the president on time, so that we won't have a repeat of that argument as we move towards the 2023 election, because it's very important. Some of the changes that were proposed were very important for the management of the election in terms of certain controversial issues around inconclusive election, around electoral offenses, around decisions that need to be made by the courts when there are disputes in certain electoral situations. These are very important legal provisions that the National Assembly should ensure that are done on time before the 2023 general elections. I would say that one of the major problems within the 2019 election, which was supposed to be an improvement on the 2015 election, is the whole idea of electronic verification of voters. The whole idea that once we have had these processes digitalized, let's ensure that it is seen through, that we have not just electronic verification of voters, but that we also have electronic transmission of results, because we have all of these discrepancies in terms of collation and in terms of transmission of results. And I think some of those legal provisions were supposed to enable INEC to be able to enforce that. We still have in some areas in 2019 where manual verification of voters were still done, and that created some delay and some challenges. We hope that this will be addressed as we look forward to the 2019 election. With the INEC itself, there has been spirited effort to ensure that the organization works better, and there are also improvements in terms of holding members of INEC to account if you compare the 2015 and 2019 election. But we need to move beyond that into ensuring that we even go beyond all of these managerial improvement in elections into changing the electoral system. A mention has been made concerning the need to introduce some kind of mixed electoral system where we have some measure of first past the post system and some proportional representation. I think it is very important for us to reduce the intensity of electoral competition, which breeds the kind of violence and logistical problems that we often have with general elections, as we see in the postponement of elections in 2019. So these are key areas where I think the National Assembly can help us in bringing people together to look at how we can introduce some of these measures to reduce the intensity of elections so that we can have more peaceful and more credible and reliable elections.
Thank you so much, Prof. Back here in the studio, Senator Itai Enang, electoral reform is key. Cynthia reeled out some of the factors that, contribute to an insecure electoral process in this country. And apart from that, this government has looked out for citizens in interventions. They've had so many interventions, geared towards women, youth, and the society itself. And because they say poverty and inequality is a driver for insecurity, all these interventions laid out there, which the president said he'll be taking 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by the time he steps down from office. And of course, Nigerians are looking forward to it. How far and how soon can this impact be felt in Nigeria?
Electoral reform, women and youth, insecurity, and the building back confidence. I want to say that, please let me latch on to the one matter that you asked about the pulse of Nigerians after the president spoke to Nigerians. Yes. I think it brought down all apprehensions and rebuilt more. I mean, it changed the narratives that the persons who criticized the presidency, the president, now look for some other things to say, because there were different things they were saying. And they saw a very composed president coming out in his element, answering questions intellectually, answering questions coherently, and answering questions in a manner that they thought that, oh, he hasn't spoken to us for a long time.
So they know it's not Jibril of Sudan now.
I think I won't go there. I won't go there. So it really changed things. And of course, it came in a lot of, in fast sequence. After the Arise interview, the NTA kicked in. And after that, it was the June 12th presidential address, assuring and calming Nigerians, mentioning and detailing what he's done for Nigeria. I think it really changed the narratives and brought down the political tension. Now, going to Electoral Act, I want to say that I was privileged to be part of the Electoral Act 2010, 2011, the amendment of 2014 on the floor. And during my tenure as a liaison officer to the Senate, to the National Assembly Senate, I also managed the process of the elections Electoral Act going to the president and issues raised, and we came back. Now, this were Electoral Act passed upon the being sponsored by individual members. I know that organizations came, made presentations, INEC came, made presentations, but I think the best electoral system act that we will have should be the one that INEC itself, seeing the problems it has gone through in conducting election, will propose, and then it will be given to the Attorney General to look at it, do some tweaking in terms of drafting and looking at the constitutional provisions, and then it is brought to Mr. President to present before the Executive Council or directly transmit to the National Assembly, so that it will be seen that it is something that is by an electoral body. And of course, again, I agree, it should be done in time, because at the time we presented the last Electoral Amendment Act to Mr. President, it was when we considered the ECOWAS protocols and other international conventions on electoral management bodies, it was too late and unconventional to assent to an electoral act in a situation where all the political parties will have to go back. If you do it at that time, you'll be forced to postpone election. And if you postpone election, you'll breach the Constitution. Now, coming back to youth and women and empowerment, I want to say that this government has tried in its first term, and in the second term, it gave much verve to it by establishment of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, in addition to independent of the Minister of Women Affairs and the Youth Development. Now, one of the greatest things that the Buhari administration has done is to assent to the constitutional amendment which reduced the age of contesting elections from 30 to 25. And of course, yesterday, I read some days ago, at least 3 of the, one in the southwest, one in the south, in south-south, one in the southwest is 25 years, is in the House of Assembly. The other one is 26 years, Akwa Ibom State, is in the House of Assembly, and then the other one, 27 years. So one of the things is to reduce the age and allow the youth to participate, so that you are not just called upon to fight or to vote, you are qualified to be voted for. Again, the space has been made wider for women participation. Talking about the economy, lifting people out of poverty, and again, I will also latch into that to talk about the economy. The economy is challenged, and part of the security challenge we have today is as a result of unemployment and non-engagement of idle hands. And unless we take conscious steps, like His Excellency Mr. President has said, look, he intends to lift 100 million people, women, youth, and all that out of unemployment, we will still have the kind of tensed and tension that we are having. And there is also this conscious action by some leaders who generally raise the temperature. And of course, by the actions of some political players who flaunt themselves as if they have arrived. And you flaunt yourself with so many cars, these or that, who were you yesterday? And the youth suddenly see you coming and behaving as if you have conquered them. This also creates anger. So I believe that what we are doing and what Mr. President is doing as a government is going back to the youth, going back to the women, taking steps that will create employment, allowing the political leaders to engage with themselves, coming out himself to address and talk to them and reassure. But we should go beyond reassurance to creating what they will do, creating employment through agriculture, ensuring that we multiply and duplicate or get a lot of sources of earning foreign revenue or earning revenue other than oil, ensuring that we capture solid minerals, agriculture, and other things into things that can be employed. Again, retooling the mentality of our youth to the fact that there is no money to be picked on the street. You work. The land you have around is your investment, which you can make so much money from. If you don't make money from there, we will be forced to not to allow these things to starve, perhaps import food, and that will keep collapsing our currency against the dollar, against the pound, in addition to import of refined petroleum products.
So, Itainang, thank you so much. Cynthia, I see you want to react, but we need to take a break now. When we come back, I'll link up with you.
The president has made a clarion call.
No one can do it better than ourselves.
We are Nigerians.
Let's together share our rich products, cultural heritage, and great talents with the rest of the world.
We are Nigerians.
Relevant stakeholders are joining the campaign, calling on fellow compatriots to come on board.
Be part of Made in Nigeria Expo, coming on the 15th and 19th of June 2021 at the Eagle Square, Abuja.
Made in Nigeria Expo is brought to you by
the Interministerial Committee on Nigeria at 60 Expo, in collaboration with Business Visa and Trainings Company Limited.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 080-37044286 or Idris on 080-34-633-644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. 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 My culture preaches peace.
Even our religion
preaches peace.
If our culture preaches peace, remember your culture. Use your voter's card. Vote peacefully
and wisely. We are one.
This message is from the National Council for Arts and Culture.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
You're welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. I've been discussing 22 years of democracy. Cynthia, When Senator Itai Enang was speaking, you wanted to react, you know, apart from the electoral reforms too, when the Not Too Young to Run bill was passed, there was a lot of cheer across the country that at least now the youth will have an opportunity to participate in politics and not bother much about the recycling, like they say, of old players. They needed to infuse new blood into the system. How has it been for youths in Nigeria to go out there, contest and win election without, of course, money?
Very important question, and the senator was right. And Nigerian youth, at the turning of the Not Too Young to Run bill into law, it was a historic moment, and we still commend the president for actually taking that bold step to assent to that bill, because what we have now is, with the bill passed, 25-year-olds can contest for the House of Reps or state assemblies. And interestingly, 101 under 35-year-olds won the elections in 2019. There were actually 103, but 2 had technical issues that so they couldn't proceed. So we have 101. And out of that, 20 under 30-year-olds actually won the elections in the state assembly. And we have 4 state assemblies with under 35-year-olds who are speakers, or 35 and below who are speakers. And Gombe just joined, so let's just say 5. And so these were positives. However, if you put this within the larger scheme of affairs, where the bill was passed into law and we had young people contesting, the political system itself became an impediment to young people. So the issue of cost, we had a lot of young people who aspired, but when it came to cost of nomination within the political parties, most of them were eliminated at that point, because if you're asked to pay millions of naira for just cost candidate nomination, there is no guarantee you win the primary. So it's like money you're throwing in. There is no guarantee. So that was a major challenge. The high cost of politics, the high cost of nomination eliminated a lot of young persons. Then those who contested, the electoral process itself became a challenge, which is why I see a lot of young people advocating for the electoral amendment bill to be passed. Because with the amendment bill, there's proposals for technology to be deployed for clearer, for integrity, and also the proposal to regulate cost. We need to do that to open up the space. Then on women, I beg to disagree at least on this one. I think there's a lot more that could have been done. How many women are appointed as ministers in a country filled with women with capacity, in a country that produced Okonjo-Iweala, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and even Dr. Amina? This is a country blessed with women with capacity and competencies, but we've not seen that reflected in the appointment by the president. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be done, and if the president can commit to give women a democracy gift, if not this year's democracy, at least next year's democracy celebration, that the president will commit that the affirmative action proposals and constitutional amendments would be passed into law, because the president, it can come through ways of executive bill, the proposals for affirmative action to increase women political participation in the constitution and guarantee women's rights. It can also come as an executive bill for gender and equal opportunities law to be passed. There are different ways the president can commit to increasing women. I think the president can do that to commit to Nigerian women that in his time, his legacy will be increasing women inclusion in politics and governance.
All right, and from available records, the present administration has indeed done more than all the previous administrations since 1999 with respect to having women in governance. Gentlemen and lady, there's one particular aspect of this conversation that we need to go into, and that's local government administration in Nigeria. Itai Enang, what has happened with this tier of government? Because it does appear that the true third tier of government is yet to take off in terms of governance structure in Nigeria. Of course, that also has to do with the issue of a devolution of powers at the subnational level, which of course the president has, of course, issued an executive order in support of, with reference to the issue of financial autonomy for legislature, local government, and of course the judiciary.
Let me say that this government of President Muhammadu Buhari has been very, very active and instrumental to ensuring that power devolves according to the Constitution. And that is why he set up a committee after the amendment of the Constitution to allow for autonomy of state judiciary. He set up a committee on implementation with Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, SAN, as chairman, and myself as the secretary of the Presidential Implementation on Autonomy of State Judiciary and State Legislatures. We went to work, we worked hard on it, and in the course of it, the governors resisted. And Mr. President had to issue executive order. And the executive order 10 were being enforced. We were working on it. And in fact, we were almost at the threshold of getting the money deducted from the account of the, because we made a request. But Mr. President had to say, look, let's hold and hear the governors more before we approached the Accountant General to deduct the funds directly to the various courts in the states and the houses of assembly in the 36 states. Now, that labor strike followed, and then we've resolved. But by today, tomorrow, the houses of assembly in the 36 states will resume, and by tomorrow, all the courts in the 36 states will resume, and all the judicial bodies. But we have the greatest and the hottest of it is the local government. The governors have exercised so much powers that are beyond what the Constitution envisaged for them, beyond what the law gave to them. The president has kept within his powers as president and does not interfere with the funds of the state government. The governors have interfered and kidnapped the funds of the local governments through what is called the local government joint account. They don't even give to the joint account and to the local government the monies that they realize as internally generated revenue, which is why the joint account was made. Internal generated revenue plus the statutory allocation, you add it and then distribute to the local government. Now, the insecurity problem we have today, I keep insisting, and I want the governors to say no. They will say no, but they can't escape the criticism of the people because it is in the entire country. Everybody is a witness. If the governors allowed the monies of the local government to get to the local government would have been able to at least capture within the net the certain persons of certain class at that local government level. They would be seen as a tier of government. If the governors had given the monies of local governments, there would be agriculture at that level. There would be some intervention in infrastructure at that level. There would be governance at that level. What happens today is that chairmen of local governments and local government officers only go to work when there is allocation has arrived.
Do we really have elected chairman of local government in Nigeria?
That is even another question. They are appointed, and of course, I was very shocked that Governor Makinde of Oyo State said to the world and to the entire country that the judgment of the Supreme Court on the illegality and what he has done on local government, judgment of the Supreme Court, that he will not obey. Governor Makinde. No, so when you see a governor stand up to this level of arrogance, I'm sorry to say arrogant, I respect him, he's my friend, I expected much more than this from him. I expected it from some people, but not from Makinde. Something is high was expected from Makinde, not this low of him. So if governors would take the monies of local government and then they are facing insecurity, and when they're facing insecurity, they say Buhari, President Buhari, then President Buhari will be applying the federal government allocation to fund the armed forces, the security agencies, trying to and going to every spot to intervene. Meanwhile, each of these spots belongs to a local government. Each of these spots that we have then belongs to a state. And the states will believe that they can deal with local government the way they are dealing with and then have peace. You cannot have peace. Because I've always said that monies of the public belonging to the public, when you take money of the public belonging to the public, which belongs to the a person with diabetes, hypertension, corona, all kinds of ailments, you voluntarily buy the ailments. And so when you take the money of local government, meant for local government, the thing that the local government ought to have solved at that level, you, the governors who've taken the money, you have voluntarily bought all those problems. So if the governors want to be free from insecurity, if the governors want to be free from all the trouble they are facing today and stop pointing accusing fingers, they have to let the local governments have their own money and to function as local government. I want to challenge the body that was set up by the Mr. President from 2019-2018 on the finances, that they should go in and try to ensure that the monies that are meant for local government, if it is not given to the local government, it should be, that body should trap that fund somewhere and then go out. And I want to please plead, it may be appropriate for the president, for Mr. President, to consider immediately after we've succeeded, we've really succeeded in the autonomy of state judiciary and state legislature, thanks to the pressure that these people that the Labour added, and I must commend the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, and the Attorney General of the Federation, the Chief of Staff who intervened, and the Governors Forum that did all the intervention. We've succeeded in that. After this, another thing we'll need to do, the President may need to do, is to free local government. And this constitutional amendment, they should try to introduce the kind of amendment that will allow the funds of local government go to the local government's strength. And I think this is possible because we have freed the state houses of assembly, and so they may also allow the local governments to be free.
Senator Etainang, I wish you had more time for you to continue on this, but the actual issue here I had wanted us to talk about is the issue of local government, which we don't have time to go to because there are no elections, people are not elected at local government level, and the state governors have made sure that everything that revolves around local government is caretaker and what have you. Jummai.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for that. And let's join Professor Emmanuel Ayade. You've listened to Professor Ita Enang on local government, states, and the federal government. It's sort of beats, our mind when it comes to the fact that with so much money, they still come running to Abuja the moment a problem starts. Is implementation the problem?
There's a point that comes out of the discussion of the senator, and I think that point needs to be emphasized. In a federation, intergovernmental relation is very critical. He mentioned how both Labour, the Governors Forum, and all these groups came together to address these issues. So we need to also look at that, this problem of implementation from that perspective. And you know that for every sector, every aspect of governance and society, we have these national councils that are supposed to harmonize the activities across the various tiers of government. Now, if you don't have this government collaborating, interacting, resolving conflicts that arise in the process of trying to implement government policy one way or the other, you won't have the kind of results that we expect Nigerians to have. And that's why scholars of federalism will say that it is intergovernmental relations that gets the job, whatever the job's done. And it's important for us in Nigeria to emphasize that. We always look at the federation in terms of the independent jurisdiction of the various tiers of government. But much more than that is that there are both formal and informal processes through which all of these governments talk to each other, resolve issues that arise in place of implementation, and try to learn and understand how some of these issues can be addressed. The same thing also relates to the issue of security. that we cannot be passing the buck. Rather, the various tiers of government should come together to address these issues, and each will understand very clearly what contribution they are supposed to make in order to ensure that the goals of security are achieved. I think that's the very important point that has come out of the discussion. Then secondly, in terms of finances, of course, we will mention the fiscal relations among the tiers of government, because you can't also do anything without money. And we also need to look at how this money is distributed, what expenditure powers are given to different levels of government, and how are they able to harness those resources, to be able to deal with responsibilities that have been allocated to them. And that's where also we also see how important intergovernmental relations is, because again, it is not good for one arm of government or one level of government to encroach into the finances of the other. In fact, the way revenue is supposed to be generated and shared is supposed to complement service delivery activities of the various tiers of government. Once you have this disconnect, what economists sometimes will call the problem of non-correspondence between the level of expenditure and the source of revenue, then you have some of these problems.
Prof, thank you very much indeed. We're actually pressed for time, so we just have to stop you there and bring in Garba Shehu. Garba Shehu, in terms of accountability and transparency, and of course the orientation of Nigerian politicians, now would you say that Nigerians are beginning to enjoy dividends of democracy, just in a nutshell?
Well, Senator Inang has itemized a lot of these initiatives from commencement of the Fourth Republic. The problem had been that they were dormant. They were not actioned. EFCC was pursuing political agenda, all of these things about treasury single account, the reforms in the banks, all of these things about IPPS. People were not implementing them. This is the real time, 2015 to now, that we are beginning to see. And all of these things about election. How many states have government under this administration have we lost? Quite a number of them. And the thing is that there's an attitudinal problem. All of these things about ethnicity and religion, and the young lady saying it's poverty, this, you don't know. The hungry Igbo man and Hausa, Yoruba, they are the same people. What they need is food. We need a political leadership that is committed, that is patriotic, that will harness national sentiment, all of these emotions, and towards the nation building. But if a governor can't pay salary, he stokes up ethnic and tribal, crisis in his own state, and then people are diverted from focusing on the issues of accountability. So we are seeing accountability, first-class practices in accountability of leaders to the nation and to the Constitution beginning 2059, and this is what I can say is the beginning of the real journey to the realization of what democracy can give to a nation.
We would like to stop you there, and of course, once again, we'd like to appreciate all of you for being here this morning for this important conversation. I wish we had enough time for us to delve into the intricacies of real governance in Nigeria, for us to be able to touch on some other issues we were unable to deliberate on this morning. But nevertheless, we've been able to do justice to this conversation as much as time could allow us. So at this point, we'd like to thank Senator Inang, Special Advisor to the President on Niger Data Affairs. We're glad you're here this morning. And of course, Malam Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. Thank you, sir, for coming this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Cynthia Mbamalu, Programs Director, IAGA Africa. We also appreciate your contribution. As well as Professor Emmanuel Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. Thank you to all of you for your contribution this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
And that's the show for today. Thank you so much for being part of the program. I am Jomo Yusuf. Do have a great day.
And I'm Kirion Umai. We're back again tomorrow for a fresh edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Have a good holiday.
survive in the rain?
It depends on the velocity of the rain.
Welcome to Abuja, the place that unites Nigeria. This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome to Thoughts for the Week. I'm Cordelia Obey, and the idea is to talk about things we usually would talk about. This time using proverbs, wise sayings, fables, you call them any name from around the world. And what are we looking at today? We are looking at being faithful to our friends. Welcome. Now, I have a story to share. It's a fable because I have some animals in it. Many, many years ago, there was a shark who had a monkey as a best friend. Every time the shark would swim to the island where this monkey was, and they would they'll be happy together. One day the shark said, my friend. As some people would say, my friendship. You don't even know where I live. Won't you come and visit me one day? And the monkey said, okay, why not if not? So it hopped onto the back of the shark, and the shark swam fast and straight towards the middle of the sea. When he got to his own home, all his friends, relatives, and all that were very happy. And the monkey said, why are your family people this happy? Shark said, our king is very sick. And they say we need the heart of a monkey to take care of him. And the monkey was almost fainting. Boy, he was very bold. So he said, my friend, why didn't you tell me what you wanted to do? You didn't trust me enough to tell me. Don't you know that we monkeys, we usually keep our hearts somewhere else? You see that tree you used to meet me? That is where I kept my heart.